He struggled near the end because he didn't have the education. He was self-educated, you know.
Well, when he had his stroke,
yeah, he was in
St. Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's when Fred used to go visit him and bring him out.
Right, but that after he came out of St. Elizabeth,
he lived with my sister.
So he never worked after that.
Oh no, he couldn't work.
So the stroke was the end. Then he moved with Aunt.
It was paralyzed, but he came out of it.
So he then moved in with Aunt Margie.
Aunt Margaret.
In Green.
When
she was living in where? When she was living.
She lived there just off of Riggs Road. You know where she lived.
Yeah.
He lived with her for years.
But that was after the stroke.
Well, he had come out of the stroke.
But I was born then. I thought the stroke was well before we were born. Right? We're mixing, now you're getting kind of...
It was near the end. You were born, but you were very young.
So the stroke was after you were married and you had kids? He was in St. Elizabeth's then?
I was married with Susie was the first one. She was living when he...
How long was he in St. Elizabeth's? Do you remember?
He was in St. Elizabeth's for about 7 months. And Fred was, you know, he loved my mother. And he used to do everything for the family. He used to go bring him, every Sunday he would go get him and bring him out. You could take him out if you take him back.
Was St. Elizabeth's considered a mental institution back then?
Well, for the insane people.
Yeah. But they didn't know that.
They thought that he had brain damage.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He got over it. So they released him, finally released him.
Okay.
And that's when he started living with my sister. Until she died. And then, what's his name? Her husband. He couldn't take it anymore.
Donald.
Then he was
Donald,
on his
right?
own. He
Donald?
went to New York. He was struggling.
You're talking about who are you talking about?
My father.
Oh.
He was struggling to make ends meet. He went to New York. We never heard from him, and he was selling coal in those days, door to door. And we'd get a little note every now and then because he was supposed to support the family. You know? I don't know how we survived near the end, really. Of course, we really leaned on my grandparents. They were doing well in the bakery business, and they took care of my mother.
Your grandparents being her parents?
My mother's
parents.
My mother's mother, my grandmother,
yeah.
Grandfather.
So they had a bakery?
Well, my uncle had a bakery.
Yeah, Uncle Jim.
My grandfather had that Greek it was a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And they did very well.
Now, it was Louis didn't Louis have a bakery as well?
Louis was no, he worked in a bakery. He struggled. Uncle George did the driving. They had customers, you know, in those days they used to...
But was this the bakery in Avondale?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jim had the bakery.
Yeah.
And
Uncle Louis was the baker.
Yeah.
And Uncle George just drove a truck.
Delivering the product.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they did well.
I remember when he closed his bakery.
I
remember when he closed his bakery down, and Mom got a lot of his
those cans
and the pans and a lot of his supplies.
I say we could almost write a book. It's like a story.
Well, it is a story. Everybody's life is a story.
And of course, for me in the service, look what happened. You heard that many times.
Tell that story.
Well,
about
I went in. I was inducted in Fort Meade.
Yeah.
And we took basic training.
Yeah.
Ground forces.
Yeah.
So on the weekend they would give tests.
Yeah.
To try to get to the Navy.
Yeah.
And the Air Force, of course.
Yeah.
And the group that I traveled with were interested in getting out. The only way you could get out of the ground forces was to get into the Air Force. So they gave a test.
And give me a date. This was World War II was already happening? This was
we were in the ground forces.
Oh, so this was 1940 what? 1940... No.
It was in the 40s, yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, one weekend we all went in, and I just went along with it. There were 4 of us.
Yeah.
Most of them from the Washington area.
Yeah.
One of them was a college graduate.
Yeah.
And one of them was a vice president in a bank, and here I was a little peon. but I tagged along, and they could get this test. There was in 4 sections, and it took 3 hours. You'd take one part, and you'd rest for 10 minutes, and take a second and third. It's like a government test, you know. I used to like those.
But it was technical.
Yeah.
Was it a technical test?
Everything.
Okay.
Anyway, of all the 4,
yeah,
I was the only one passed.
And you were the only one that didn't have
wasn't interested.
And didn't have a high school diploma.
Well, I didn't have a high school education.
Okay.
So I became property of the Air Corps. So when I got back, they got the instructions. So they pulled me out of the ground forces.
Yeah.
And reassigned me.
Yeah.
So I just lay there for about 2 months because they didn't know what to do with me.
And where were you at that point? Still Fort
Scott Field.
Scott Field, which is where?
Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah. Finally, they sent me to college, LeGrand State Teachers College, to pursue the Air Corps.